Today I am going to give you my preview and prediction of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. If you are new to this channel, give us a like, hit that subscribe button, share this video around to all college football friends, fans that you know, hit the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Let's get into it and talk about the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. The Peach Bowl it'll be played on December 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time between the 10th ranked 10-2 Michigan State Spartans from the Big Ten and the 12th ranked Pittsburgh Panthers, who are 11-2 and are your 2021 ACC champions. This game is also interesting for the fact that the top player from each team has opted out so that they can prepare for the NFL draft. Kenny Pickett from Pittsburgh, who is 334 of 497, has 4,319 passing yards, 42 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, is Pitt's starting QB, and he is opted out for the NFL. Likewise, Michigan State running back Kenneth Walker III, who has 263 carries, 1,636 yards, and 18 rushing touchdowns. He has also opted out in preparation for the NFL. So, two teams without their best player matching up against each other. I've heard people say that because of these two players being out, this game might be unwatchable. I would argue it's the top player from each team out. It's going to force other aspects from each team to step up. It's probably going to force Pittsburgh to maybe run the ball more, or step it up on defense, and this will certainly force Michigan State to step it up on the defensive side of the ball and leave room for Jordan Simmons to step up at running back along with the Michigan State O-line. Pittsburgh is given a 62.1% chance to win this game according to ESPN's Football Power Index. Michigan State, of course, given a 37.9% chance to win. Michigan State is favored by 2.5 points. This is, of course, because the quarterback position is arguably more important than the running back position overall. So that's just some basic stuff there. And now we are going to preview the defense versus the offense. Specifically, the Spartan defense versus the Panther offense. Now, before Pickett opted out, this is what everyone was looking at. Everyone was looking at the fact that it's Kenny Pickett with Jordan Addison. This is one of the most prolific pass offenses in the nation. But here's the thing. Pittsburgh's offense doesn't have Mark Whipple as its OC. He's now in Lincoln, Nebraska. They also don't have Kenny Pickett. So the interesting thing with Pittsburgh is you don't have your coordinator, you don't have your QB. But more importantly, who is going to be their QB? I'm thinking that Nick Patty is going to be their QB. He's been Kenny Pickett's primary backup. He's seen the most throwing attempts outside of Kenny Pickett on the team, as he has 14 throwing attempts. He's thrown for 140 yards, completes 85.7% of his passes, has an average pass of 10 yards, and has no touchdowns, no picks, hasn't been sacked at all, has a 169.7 passer rating. He hasn't seen a lot of action this year. I've watched some of his spring game film, and he looks like a QB that, is average, above average, good. I mean, he's obviously not Kenny Pickett level by any means, but he's not a bad QB. And where this mismatches, of course, is the Spartan defense. Because Pittsburgh, by my knowledge, still has Jordan Addison, and they still have everyone else. It's just Kenny Pickett. And that Spartan defense in the later half of the season has been abused and taken advantage of over and over again. when it comes to pass defense. So that's what everyone was looking at. I think that's still something important to look at. Pittsburgh's offense scores 43 points per game on average, gains 504.3 yards per game, 350.2 of those are passing yards, 154.1 of those are rushing yards. Pittsburgh's main leader on the ground is Israel Abanikanda, who has 635 rushing yards for 5.4 yards per carry and 7 touchdowns on the ground. Vincent Davis has 550 yards, 4.2 yards per carry, and 4 rushing TDs. Rodney Hammond Jr., another running back, has 484 rushing yards, 4.9 yards per carry, and 5 rushing touchdowns. So Pittsburgh here, you got kind of a running back rotation going on. They don't use 1 or 2 guys. It seems to me that they use 3. Kenny Pickett is 4th in rushing yards, but he's not going to be playing, so there's no point in really bringing up his stats here. And then Pittsburgh's leader on the receiving end is wide receiver Jordan Addison, who has 1,479 receiving yards, 15.9 average yards per reception, and 17 receiving touchdowns. He won the top wide receiver award this year. Jared Wayne is 2nd in receiving yards with 654, 14.2 average yards per reception, and 5 receiving touchdowns. Tasir Mack is 3rd in receiving yards with 461 and 3 receiving touchdowns, and Lucas Krull, the tight end, is 4th in receiving yards with 443, and he has 6 receiving touchdowns. So those are just some leaders to look out for on Pittsburgh's offense. And I'm excited to see this explosive offense against a defense that, now that we get to the Spartan defense, is very good at stopping the run. Pittsburgh's not going to have the same passing threat they've had. Michigan State has one of the better rush defenses in the country. However, that passing defense is atrocious. And from what I can see with Nick Patty, as long as he is not the worst quarterback in the nation, he will certainly take somewhat of an advantage of this pass defense. The Michigan State Spartans defense this year has allowed 25.7 points per game, and this number has dramatically increased in the second half of the season when they faced teams like Michigan, Purdue, Ohio State, Maryland, and Penn State, teams with better offenses than the teams they faced earlier in the year. Michigan State's defense allows 455.6 yards per game. They actually allow more yards per game than they do forcing yards per game on their offense. They allow 337.7 passing yards, 117.9 rushing yards is what Michigan State allows. On the defensive side, they are led in total tackles by Xavier Henderson, who has 94. He also has 3 sacks, 2 passes defended, a pick, and a forced fumble. Henderson is probably the only good player in their secondary. I mean, he's really good. He's good at making tackles. They use him on blitzes. They use him on coverage, about anything. But everyone else in their secondary is very questionable. There's the likes of Darius Snow, Ronald Williams, Chester Kimbrough. My Spartan friends just honestly call him a disaster, period, amen. The secondary is far, far from their strength. And your leader in picks, which is anywhere from Xavier Henderson to Chester Kimbrough, at most, each member has 1 interception. Probably the only positive thing about Michigan State's secondary is that they occasionally capitalize off of mistakes, but they have to be pretty bad mistakes for them to do so. However, in saying that, Michigan State's defensive line and linebacker core is impressive. Their front seven, amazing. Jacob Panashuk leads the team in sacks with 6. He is an NFL defensive end. He also has 3 passes defended, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery in 32 total tackles. Jeff Petrowski, another defensive end, has 5.5 sacks, 31 total tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. Drew Beasley, yet another defensive end, has 5 total sacks, 27 total tackles, 2 passes defended, and a fumble recovery. Maverick Hansen, the defensive tackle, 3.5 sacks, a pass defended, 25 total tackles. You also have Noah Harvey and Quavarius Crouch, linebackers, who each have 2 sacks and at least a pass defended and a forced fumble. You also cannot forget, by any means, you can't forget Cal Halliday. Don't know why it took me so long to look at that name, but Halliday has a half a sack. He had that 1 pick 6 against Indiana, 2 passes defended, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. Definitely one of the stars on this team. That is the Spartan defense. We previewed, of course, the Pitt offense. This is going to be the matchup that I think, this is the key matchup. And that's not to say that the Spartan offense versus the Pitt defense isn't important by any means. Of course it is. But Pittsburgh, just to give you a hint at the preview there that's coming up in a few seconds, Pittsburgh's D-line is one of the top in the nation in sacks, and their secondary is not nearly as bad. You will need to see Michigan State's offense step up, and I do think they will, because I think Tucker's a good coach, and I think that Jay Johnson is a very underrated OC. But the Michigan State defense, if they don't step up, it won't matter what their offense does, because we all know that what Pitt's offense can do. And I have full faith that even without Whipple and even without Pickett, Pitt's offense will be prolific against the Spartan passing defense. It'll be up to really Michigan State's defense to tighten up, to be disciplined, to not blow coverages. That is what they will need to beat the Pitt Panthers. Now we're previewing the Spartan offense versus the Pitt defense. The Panther defense allows only 23.1 points per game, 348.6 yards per game, 257.4 of those yards are passing. Only 91.2 of those yards are rushing. And that latter stat, I have every bit of confidence that could actually be held up in this game, because Kenneth Walker, again, is out. And looking at just Pitt's defense in general, their defensive line is their strength, especially getting pressure. Habakkuk Baldonado, has 9 sacks. He's a defensive lineman from Pitt. He leads his team in sacks with 9. He has 40 total tackles, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. Kalija Kensi is another defensive lineman who has 32 total tackles, 7 sacks, a pass defended, and a forced fumble. John Morgan III, another defensive lineman, has 5.5 sacks, 25 total tackles, and a pass defended. And John Patrician, a linebacker, has 62 total tackles, 4.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, 1 returned for a touchdown. Those are some leaders in the sack category. Your leader in total tackles is Servosia Dennis, a linebacker. He has 4 sacks, 76 total tackles, an interception returned for a touchdown, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. Your leader in interceptions is John Patrician, a linebacker, and Eric Hallett, a defensive back, each with 3 interceptions and 1 pick 6. It appears that Pittsburgh's secondary has 4 pick 6s. 15 total picks, and they do have 6 fumble recoveries. They also have 51 sacks, which I think only trails 2 other teams. I think they're third in the nation in total sacks from their defensive line. So that is just absolutely, to me, that's crazy. And Michigan State's O-line, not to knack on them, for the amount of talent and lack of depth that they have done well. But part of that is also the fact that Walker, their running back, who is amazing, who should have been invited to New York, can't forget that, he hid a great amount of the weaknesses of that Spartan O-line. I don't think that Jordan Simmons or Elijah Collins will be able to hide the foibles and the weaknesses of the O-line. I just don't think they'll be able to. And a team that specializes in getting pressure, we've seen Michigan do it, we've seen Ohio State do it, we've seen Indiana do it. I mean, we've seen teams that if you have a good front seven, you will be able to pressure Michigan State's quarterback. It's just a fact. It's a fact that you cannot deny. You've seen Nebraska do it. So Thorne is going to have to be extra aware. You cannot take too many sacks because, again, like I've said, Pittsburgh also has an explosive offense. And, this is just kind of a personal opinion of mine. Pittsburgh's offense has been proven to be better than yours. You've lost your best player. You, as I'm talking to Michigan State. Michigan State's lost their best player. Pittsburgh's lost their best player. And in a certain sense, at a very basic level, you're taking a similar amount off of each offense. And I still think that in the end, Pittsburgh's is better. So you can't take sacks here. You can't take too many tackles for loss. You got to be smart with your play calls. Now, granted, Pittsburgh's secondary is not the greatest in the world, and getting to Michigan State's offense, Peyton Thorne and Jaden Reed, Jalen Naylor, and even Jordan Simmons, the second-string running back, they're not nothings by any means. Peyton Thorne is a reliable QB who has thrown for 2,886 yards on the year, completes 60.8% of his passes, averages 8.5 yards per pass, has 24 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He's been sacked 18 times with a 150.3 passer rating. On the ground, you have Jordan Simmons, who now that Walker is out, is the leader in rushing yards with 255. He has an average of 4.7 yards per carry, and he has no rushing touchdowns. Peyton Thorne is third. And, I mean, many know this, not everyone, but Thorne can scramble when needed. He's been successful on some option plays. He even had, I think, a long of 32 and rushed for a touchdown against Purdue. He has 177 rushing yards, an average of 2.5 yards per carry, and 4 rushing touchdowns. You also have Elijah Collins, who did start under Mark D'Antonio at running back, almost had a 1,000-yard season, I believe, running the football. He only has 87 rushing yards, 7.3 yards per carry, no rushing touchdowns. He is third on the depth chart. But you might see more of him. I don't know if Simmons or him is going to start. You might see more of Collins. I think you definitely will, actually, now that Walker is on preparing for greater and bigger things. On the receiving end, you have Jaden Reed, the wide receiver, who has 946 receiving yards, 17.8 yards per reception, and 8 receiving touchdowns. I'm fully confident that he will probably cross that 1,000-yard mark after this game. Again, noting that both teams' receiving cores are better than the opposing teams' secondaries. Jalen Naylor is second in receiving yards with 587, 18.9 yards per reception, and 6 receiving touchdowns. Trey Mosley, another wide receiver, is third with 472 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. You got Connor Hayward, the tight end, converted from the running back position, who has 289 receiving yards and a touchdown. Monterey Foster, a wide receiver, and Tyler Hunt, a tight end, each have one receiving touchdown as well. So that right there is the Michigan State offense against the Panther defense. Both teams they're not bad on special teams. I do not personally find a reason to largely include special teams in a game unless both special team units are absolutely atrocious. Matt Coughlin has been dealing with an injury, and so I kind of want to bring that up here. He's only made 64.7% of his field goals. He's made all of them from the 20 to 29 range. He's made half of them from the 30 to 39 yard range. He's made all of his extra points. So just putting that into perspective, I think that this will be a shootout. I don't think that both defenses are good enough to force each other into a lot of field goals. So special teams here, again, as long as both units aren't atrocious, or one of them isn't, and neither of these teams have atrocious special teams like Nebraska, for example, I don't really find a reason to mention it. There's not a massive mismatch here. So that is the Panther defense against the Spartan offense. If you have any thoughts or questions, just comment below. I love having conversation and, kind of debating with people. It's what makes college football so fun, is people having their own biases and opinions. So comment your thoughts down below if you have any. So I've previewed both of these teams. I've previewed the Spartan offense against the Panther defense, and vice versa, the Panther offense against the Spartan defense. So finally, let's get to my prediction. My prediction here is Pittsburgh 38, Michigan State 34. And understand, when I originally saw that Michigan State was facing Pitt, I'm a Michigan fan. I laughed in my chair, or wherever I was, easily for a few minutes, because the idea of Kenny Pickett facing the Spartan secondary, it's like, what are you doing? It's like the CFP wanted Michigan State to lose their New Year's Six Bowl, because why else would you pick, the most NFL QB and put him against the worst secondary? But now that Pickett's out, even though Walker is out, the quarterback position is the rock of the team. It's more important. Kenny Pickett for Pitt is more important than Kenneth Walker for State. So it makes it a lot more even. If Pickett was starting for State and for Pittsburgh and Walker was starting for State, I would give Michigan State a minimal chance to win this game. But both of them are out. I give Michigan State a better chance to win this game than I would have before. This game's going to be very close, but I do think that Pittsburgh's offense is better than Michigan State's offense, even when both teams are without their top player. I think that, Pittsburgh's backup QB in Nick Patty is going to be fine, as he has Jordan Addison, Jared Wayne, and he has a running back rotation of 3 guys who average over 4 yards a carry. He's going to be fine. He's going to be absolutely fine. Michigan State, on the other hand, sometimes Jay Johnson or Mel Tucker, they get too stubborn, and they've relied on Walker just to pound up the middle and make his own plays when they have to, and I can't blame them. You do that when you have a Heisman, when you have an elite player like that, you abuse that privilege. It's common sense. You don't have that anymore, though. You're going to have to rely on Thorne to be consistent, to step up his game. Same thing with the secondary, and I just don't know if that's going to happen. But that's my prediction. If Michigan State wins, no surprises. I think this game is a toss-up, and I think for the fact that the best player from each team opted out, it puts some mystery behind this game, It kind of makes it unpredictable because you don't know truly how it is going to affect each team against the other. It kind of takes some of the mismatches out. It'll be very interesting. I think this game is still worth watching. It's not like Purdue versus Tennessee, where only one team, their major players, opt out. It isn't that unbalanced. I'm excited for this game. I'm excited to preview and give my prediction on other New Year's Six Bowls. So if you want to listen to those, again, like this video, hit that subscribe button, click that notification bell so you can get notified when I post future prediction videos. Comment your thoughts down below. That's all I have to say today. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys around.